Good morning, everybody, or whatever time it is where you are. This is Truth Toothpaste, and today I'm coming at you with a reply video based on a video I just watched very recently by a YouTuber by the name of Vaush. And Vaush, um, I re- was sent to his channel through a link on the Sam Harris Reddit, which is kind of my connection to a semi non-echo chamber kind of speaking environment that's available right now. Yes, you do have neo-Nazis and crazy communists trying to fight it out there, but you do also have a lot of very interesting conversation between elements of the right and left, even though I would say Sam Harris, is obviously kind of left-leaning, kind of technocratic individual in terms of his own personal politics. He does have this kind of strong tendency to embrace the truth, no matter what that truth may be. Now, you need to back all of it and provide all the information, but that is just a great environment right now. I think or at least it's doing its job when a lot of other environments aren't doing its job in terms of providing a stimulating environment with actual elements from both sides of the political divide. And Vaush is say seems to be left leaning, and he said he has a background degree in sociology. So my critique of his video on 1350, which I'll explain in a minute, is going to be a little bit different because my background is in history. So this may seem like me going back and nitpicking, and I'm very much more of a libertarian minded individual than a progressive minded individual, but I'm going to explain why. And I just first want to say I really appreciate the structure and kind of linear explanation that he went through because us historians really appreciate that. It was, you know, not unemotional, but it was light on the vague racial animus against white people and stuck to the real historical things that you can point to that were structural racism. So he didn't really say anything about the current day protests or riots or Black Lives Matter or Antifa or any of that kind of stuff. It was more about history. So I'm going to kind of go into, and what he did is he explained 1350. And what 1350 is it's shorthand for a set of criminal statistics. And what it is that black people in the United States represent 13% roughly of the population, but at the same time, they commit roughly 50% of the murders. And, that's how I always understood it. He said violent crimes, but I always thought the ratio drops off when you included all violent crimes because it depends on how you categorize what a violent crime is. But it's this kind of disparity. And he's right when you have certain people who want to completely derail conversations by bringing up this 1350 point. Now, it's I don't think you can completely explain it with the discussions that he's given right now. I don't think it was a complete. Oh, it's just demographics and it's just social. And if we give X population X amount of money, the crime will magically disappear. I don't agree with that premise in lock, stock, and barrel. I think you can explain elements of why a certain group or community is more or less violent through their socioeconomic status, but I'm going I'm going to argue that that's not really 100% explanation. So basically, we have this disparity in America where a lot of the murders and violence and drug dealing and gangs is isolated into a very kind of small community within the United States. and it's in black communities, and it's isolated in a relatively few major cities. So if I was just going to rattle some off, we're talking about New Orleans, Baltimore, Chicago. Those are the big ones that come to mind. But you have smaller outposts of this kind of culture of, and I don't want to say it's black culture because it's not representative of all black culture. It might be part of the element that you see out there in popular music and that kind of stuff. But I just want to make it clear: the inner city gangs is not the entirety of black culture. That's kind of a semantic thing that people can fall into, which is incorrect, and I don't want to do that. But basically, you have this problem where there's a lot of crime in a very small area in a very small community, and we're looking for explanations why that is. And we have a lot of really bad explanations for why that is right now. So, like right now, there's a lot of crime in an area, and we're blaming the cops for it. No. I mean, yes, there are abusive cops. Yes, there are cops who go too far, who are stressed out because they're working in these high crime environments and do stupid stuff and do horrible stuff, and some of them should go to jail for some of the things they've done. Um, the idea, though, that you can make this situation better, I mean, the term that Vaush used was over policed. I mean, if you are a community and you have this many violent murders going on, if you are a reasonable person, you probably want those murders solved. If you have gangs and drug violence and these kind of things going on in your community, you probably don't have this romanticized relationship like it's, the Don, and it's a Hollywood movie, and you're going to kiss his pinky ring and attend his wedding and eat his birthday cake for his daughter or his wedding cake or whatever. This kind of romanticized vision of how a gang and the environment that the gang comes from would interact with each other. That I have to say is kind of, it seems like maybe you're getting your. I'm not saying that there aren't certain things that they do for them out of fear, but if it was a system that everybody really liked, you wouldn't just keep it when you're a desperately poor group of people, right? If that was the system that people wanted, it wouldn't be a situation that only popped up in these desperate circumstances, like Vaush pointed out that and in the main two things is he pointed to two other large groups of people who immigrated to the United States: the Irish and the Italians. I guess we're talking about late 1800s here in the particular wave of people that came through, who were very poor and were in similar situations economically to black people in the late 1800s. And, through these series of steps throughout history, Vaush describes the process by which the Irish and the Italians stopped being kind of distinctive groups in and of themselves and became Americans. So, we don't have, I don't know about you, but I don't run into, a lot of people with strong Irish or Italian accents. About the only Italian accents I hear is the bad one from Mario Brothers. So basically, these groups are no longer any kind of significant barrier between them and the general population in terms of their education or opportunity or any of those sort of things. But one thing that I really seems like Voss missed out on here is that this was not a light switch process. This is a process that is very familiar when it comes to any group who emigrates to the United States as lowest rung on the economic ladder sort of population. And it's a generational process because a lot of times the first generation of people who arrive in America, they speak a foreign language. if they speak English, they may not speak it well. They may speak it with a very heavy accent. They may not be able to do even a lot of the kind of basic service jobs that a lot of people who aren't any better educated than them but just have a stronger grasp on basic English would be able to do. So they have less job opportunities, and they have limited education because presumably they're coming from the bottom of the pile, or they're coming from deprived backgrounds and underdeveloped countries for whatever time period, right? So the first generation of immigrants are usually not your massive overnight success stories. They are your kind of generational immigrant stories where they work ridiculously hard hours. They work jobs that other people don't want. They're mopping floors. They're doing hard labor. They're doing you know just the very bottom jobs in society, but they provide for their families. They provide in such a way. They're very tight knit. They're like, especially in the case of the Italians and the Irish, they were very religiously conservative, and they had very strong cultures and beliefs of right and wrong, and so it's kind of wrong to ascribe the process that Vaush described to how the Irish and the Italians integrated into the American middle. It was not, as he said, oh, well, they served in World War II and they came back and they got GI Bill and they all magically got educated and they all became white people and that was the end of the story. I mean, that's taking this entire generational process that starts in like the late 1800s and ascribing a single government program to it that to subscribe the whole reason why these two groups of people are now more or less considered Americans and indistinguishable from white Americans. And that's just wrong. The first, by and large, you're gonna have your exceptions, but by and large, your first generations of Irish people that come here and your first generation of Italian people worked shitty jobs, worked long hours, worked for crappy pay, but they passed on a better opportunity to the next generation. And the next generation were more American just by virtue of geographically living in America during more of their formative years. Those kids did not necessarily get the best education because they were working in the ghetto. They were living in the ghetto, and they had to start working at very young ages in many cases because their family needed the extra income. So these kids were not, handed gold-plated educations in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, right? They got the same kind of bad education that the black people. Well, I can't say that because the black people in many locations had segregated schools, so they may have even gotten worse educations. But the point stands that they did not get great educations. They were not just handed wonderful opportunities from some kind of top-down government organization to hand to these people. It's like, no, their parents sacrificed, scrimped, and saved, provided an environment for them, and gave them a slightly more opportunistic situation so that the next generation of Irish and Italians were able to achieve more than their parents did. So instead of just being, people that were washing clothes and cleaning floors and doing menial tasks, maybe they were able to land a more skilled job set in a factory, or maybe their parents were able to obtain some of that knowledge and they were able to pass it on, and they were able to make connections and get into the economy that way. And that is the process by which a distinct group of people kind of becomes American. It's not the president and the Congress getting up there and signing a bill and saying, we declare today to be the signing of ItaliaCare. And the ItaliaCare is communism for Italians, and we're going to be sending a check and special education just to Italian people. And I promise next month our legislation agenda will be Irish Care. And Irish Care will make sure the Irish will be getting checks in the mail every month, and special education so the Irish can fully integrate. That that's not anything remotely close to what happened, and it insults those Irish and Italian families who lived moral, tight knit, hardworking lives to provide opportunities for their children. It was not a government program that swooped down and lifted these people out of poverty. And, and one other point I do want to make is that even while they were living in poverty in America, they still found that life preferable to the life that they left behind wherever they came from, or they wouldn't have come here. That's a big point that people miss too. They see the bottom rung of the economic ladder, and they're so afraid of it and so emotionally torn up by the kind of lives that they lead that they forget that usually when people are in those kind of positions, the alternatives are worse. So pretend when you start with some kind of imaginary utopia of magical redistribution of infinite resources to everyone, your historical radar is not calibrated properly. If these people are here and working in shitty jobs to American standards, it's probably not because somebody forced them to. It's because they wanted to, because the alternatives were worse. And this is the truth whether you're considering overseas sweatshops versus people living on Iron Age farms in Indonesia or China or somewhere like that too, is that don't disrespect rungs on the economic ladder just because you find them morally reprehensible or nasty or whatever, that you're morally torn up or emotionally torn up about this. Is that I have relatives in the third world who are living on $8 a day. And I realize that's not even close to poverty status, but that's kind of like the working man average. That isn't like all the women and all the young people are getting that $8 a day either. So that's another point I kind of wanted to bring in here, is that when we're talking about poverty in the United States, we are not talking about absolute poverty. We're not talking about the difference between starving and having a full belly when we're talking about the economic situation of the vast majority of black people in the United States. And this is a mistake that people make, is they use all of this kind of emotional, evocative. It's like, oh my God, you're trying to go through all these things, like it's so horrible, and they're so downtrodden, and it's so awful for them, and you just got to realize that because of all the horrible things that are happening to them, they're gonna be violent, and they're gonna attack people, and they're gonna do all these horrible things. But if we were to isolate African Americans from the American population and compare them to other countries in the world, it wouldn't be the richest country in the world if we took all African Americans and made their own country. But by global standards, it would be a relatively rich country when you add up all the benefits they currently receive, all of the work that they currently do. They are by no means a one of the groups of populations on this planet that are living in what we would consider absolute poverty. Now, yes, you can do all sorts of conversions, and you can say, oh, well, the purchasing power parity and all this other stuff. Yeah, but at the end of the day, once you do all the conversions, these people are nowhere near starvation and deprivation, and what you have is relative poverty. You have relative poverty between certain communities and other communities. And morally, I see a far different response being appropriate between absolute poverty and relative poverty. Absolute poverty, you are literally having people starving. You literally have people dying, not from simple preventative diseases. Somebody needed $10 of antibiotics, but There wasn't a clinic that they could go to get the $10 worth of antibiotics. Uh, that's absolute poverty. You know, uh, relative poverty is being upset that somebody has a nicer a car and you have to take the public transportation, or somebody has a nicer car than you have, or somebody has a nicer house or a nicer apartment than you have, or somebody has designer clothes and you have clothes from Walmart. That is relative poverty, and relative poverty is much less uh, emotion it doesn't really capture sympathy in the same way that absolute poverty does. You know, I would not go to the black community today and film a starving child video the way you see on TV for foreign children in different places around the world, because I wouldn't find very many starving people. What you would find is an underclass that is fatter than rich people. And I'm not saying that's a really healthy diet that they're being provided by their economic status, but I am saying that no one's dying of starvation in the ghetto, except for like mentally ill people that are like too whacked up on stuff to even figure out how to get food assistance or the basic food that is available. Now, I do want to say that to the degree that any disparity between the populations in America is caused by corruption, by outright structural corruption. And this is one of the things I want to appreciate Vaush's commentary for, because Vaush did stick directly to things like redlining that we can document, that we can go back. It's like, yes, black people were not allowed to live in certain areas. And yes, public schools are funded by property taxes. So black people did go to schools that were funded less than white people. I do want to say that I have sympathy for any situation that is overtly caused by corruption. Now, the property tax situation is a little bit different than the redlining situation, because the redlining situation kept people who could have made it on the outside on the inside of the ghettos, and so it slowed the integration process, and to our detriment today. And so that's part of what I want to address here, is that we are already seeing an integration process in work, because you cannot go to take the narrative that Vaush has given us about inner city, poor, high density, crime ridden, gang ridden, drug ridden neighborhoods, and universally apply it to all African Americans in America. You just can't, because there are large and growing groups of middle class and upper middle class African Americans, blacks, whatever the PR term of the day is, that have made it, have made it into solidly into the working class, solidly into the middle classes, are living in neighborhoods right across the street from white people, and are yes, are they undercounted in the social club elite? Are they, I'm sorry, my personal lived experience is kind of like lower middle class, upper working class, and there's been no. If the goal was to keep African Americans out of this class of, kind of making it middle America, then it's not really doing that. It's not really keeping people out of that section of society. So basically, the point is, we are already seeing the integration process happen. It's just that because of a misunderstanding of how this integration process goes about, that it's a generational
process, instead of a light switch that you throw with some kind of government program that just magically provides education and then and income, and then everything is great and wonderful after that. um, we already see it coming. The integration process is already here, or we would not have the black communities that we do have that do not match this gang description, and they would not have the economic stats that they do have, because that narrative just does not match 100% of the black community, and I think it's wrong to characterize that. And as far as the whole genetic explanation versus environmental explanation, I think you can make the genetic argument based on individuals. And I think this is a trap that that even white people fall into. And let me explain that. Is that there are differences between individuals, okay? And that's just the way it is. That if you are going on a blank slate theory, you're going to be disappointed. Yes, we can help people with better education, and we can help people with what do you want to call it? Better environment. I mean, it's either genetics or environment. But you can take two people out of any ethnic group that you want, provide them with the same education, the same opportunities, the same family life, and you can get two completely distinct outcomes from those two people. So to think that if we just improve the environment, we're going to completely solve this problem, you're being naive. Because I have siblings. I have white siblings who were given the same opportunities I was given, who were given the same teachers, the same schools, the same parents, the same house, all the same kind of upbringing. And we have wildly different economic outcomes based on our personalities, based on our interests, based on our intelligence level. Yeah, I'm going to say it, that I am smarter than some of my siblings. Thank God. So, yeah, you're still going to have genetic diversity. I'm not going to fall in this trap and think that, are certain traits underrepresented in the black community? I don't think so. I think that either way, we can do a lot by doing what Vaush says and improving their environment. Where I kind of disagree with Vaush is on how that environment should be funded or created. Because right now, we have kind of like, I would say, like an angry population who has been believing a narrative, a narrative of white racism. And this narrative has a degree of truth to it, or it wouldn't get any traction. If it did include the real negative sort of things, the redlining, the things that legitimately in the past held back the black community from making progress to integrating into getting out of this like lower class gang ridden condition that they're in. And I'll get into like maybe one other kind of more conspiracy theory kind of angles on why a gang class would be desirable by the power structure right now. But that's at the end. I just want to say here that as far as funding, go back to the Italians and the Irish. Did they integrate because they were given magic special education funds from other classes of people? No. They were able to integrate because of the sacrifices of those initial generations who gave better opportunities to the following generations. To suggest that the black people can't and aren't
already following this process is to insult black people and to say, you know what, you guys can't do this yourselves. You need the government to fly in and bail you out of this situation that you're in. Even though Vaush set these immigrant sets of people up, and I will admit that the black community got a later start than the Irish and the Italians. But it doesn't mean that the process isn't already ongoing, that there aren't black people who have made it in past generations because of the sacrifice of intelligent, hardworking, morally upright African American people who sacrificed and gave a better life to their children. That's how you integrate. That's how you make a better life process. It is a generational process. It is not something that you can legislate in the term of one government and sign some checks and make a decree and just there you go. You've got yourself a middle class society now because the government decided to just come in and do it. So we've been providing funding for a very long time, and so you have to say, well, why are some black people making it and other black people not making it? Because there is not an absolute barrier to black achievement in this country. To what degree is it because the echoes of racism are still bouncing around in the ears of black people and they get discouraged and they think, you know what, because of the political environment, because of all the things that I've seen, that the deck is stacked unfairly against me, and therefore I am going to adjust my behavior in such a way that is going to make it worse. That is not going to follow this kind of tight, narrow path of sacrifice and grinding, family-based opportunity growth. And instead, I'm going to live a life of kind of I don't have to listen to anybody. I'm going to get my government check. I'm going to engage in illegal criminal behavior because fuck white people and fuck with the white people's government, and you can't tell me what to do, right? Y'all's racist. Okay, that's not helping anybody. To the degree that it's true, to the degree that it has disadvantaged black people, to the degree in the past that there were structural elements in the way of black people being able to perform this mechanism on their own, I will allow for that. And it's much more in the past than it is currently, because structurally when you're talking about making a judgment call, structurally it's set up for promoting minorities. And I'm not really upset about that because except for in the cases where that process actually hurts the minorities, I'm kind of okay with it. I think you might do away with affirmative action just because of that process of taking underqualified black people, putting them in a job that's too hard for them to do, or putting them in an educational environment that is too hard for their current level, and then causing them to underperform in that environment when they would have performed in a more moderate environment is still an issue. But basically, is the answer that Vaush puts out at the end this, oh, we just need better school funding and then all these problems go away? No. That is not how you build strong families. That is not how the Irish and the Italians made it. This is not how people integrate. People do not integrate by collecting a government check. People do not integrate by creating a special isolated communism just for a special ethnic group. And I really think that if you were to try to do something that kept people from their natural disposition of earning and working towards advantages for their own children, I think you would see a sociological nightmare because people are self-interested. They want to see, but that might like to see you and other people thrive, but they definitely want to see their children thrive, and they definitely don't want to see their children disadvantaged for the benefit of somebody else. And that's where the whole difference between absolute poverty and relative poverty comes in, because especially when you're talking about education, the 80-20 rule applies. And the 80-20 rule is that you can get 80% of the benefit of an education from 20% of the funding. So basically, if you are a natural talent in physics, you are a black Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, and you're given a shitty, out of date, beat up physics book in your inner city school, you're probably still going to be interested in physics due to your natural proclivity to be a genius, right? And the fact that the book is beat up or out of date isn't necessarily going to prevent you from displaying your ability to integrate this knowledge that is way beyond your current level, right? So that individual, Black Sheldon, may ultimately end up behind a white Sheldon in some kind of late stage college university comparison, but he will not be mopping floors in the ghetto, because the system as it's set up will still recognize talent. A capitalist system wants to exploit you, but it wants to exploit you at the highest level possible for your for your level of talent. Yes, you will run into a certain point where the upper class feel threatened, and perhaps, but we're talking about the 10% and the 1% here. We're not talking about the guy down at Walmart that's the supervisor instead of the guy just stacking stuff on the shelves. And so that is where I will venture very briefly into conspiracy theory territory. It's like, why is a black gang problem associated mainly with the sale of illegal drugs allowed to exist in the modern state of America? Now, you can prescribe a purely racial motive to that, but I would say that for a intellectual ruling class, that is a very kind of stupid, unprofitable sort of mentality to have, right? These are your shadowy banking figures, the people that pull the strings in Congress and decide who gets nominated onto tickets based on how much they donate to different different organizations. So they've got a lot of power. We know how to solve this kind of stuff in the 30s, right? After Prohibition. We know how to get rid of this if we really wanted to get rid of it. So why don't the elite do something to get rid of drug gangs? And my answer is because they like the narco money. And I know what you're saying, but wait a minute, Truth Toothpaste. The government isn't getting oh, excuse me. The government isn't getting this this narco money. The hell they're not. The big banks. Nothing happens in the United States for this long in this organized of a fashion if the elite haven't made their peace with it. Okay? The fact that there are drugs available in every city in the United States is only allowed because the elite don't care or they actively support it. And I believe it's because they are in on the take. That these organizations could not exist if the government was not benefiting in some way. And the way they benefit is that these banking institutions, when you get high enough into the hierarchies of these criminal organizations, it's like this is this is not between your beat cop and your local drug dealer. This is not the kind of relationship they have. We're talking about the relationship between the kingpins of these cartels and these distribution organizations and the banking interests that rule the United States, or at least so greatly influence it, based on their ability to basically print infinite money whenever the hell they feel like it. And they get billions of dollars from illegal funds. The criminal organizations need a way to launder this money, and they need someone to look the other way while they do it, or their business is not profitable. If they cannot spend the money that they obtain from illegal drug sales, then the whole process is pointless for them. They've risked their lives, they've damaged their communities, and for what? You know, if you've got a bunch of money that you can't reinvest or spend on yourself. You know, if the IRS is knocking on your door, hello, Mr. Black criminal gang member drug dealer. That is a very nice car you have, and we see that you have been living a very, very nice lifestyle here, and have you listed as unemployed. Where are you getting this income to have this lifestyle? I mean, this is what would happen to a white guy if he had even a marginal side job that he wasn't reporting to the IRS, right? So these people know what's going on, but they're in on the take. You know, the money laundering process is expensive. Since the money is earned illegally and it's dirty money, they don't mind losing a big chunk of it to whatever laundering process. And the big banks are in on it. So you're getting billions of dollars a year that are flowing directly to these big banks, directly to these power centers. And it has a side bonus of kind of like a large percentage of the population, both white and black, who are the consumers of these drugs, basically winning Darwin Awards and fucking their lives up, and to such a degree that they no longer become a threat to the stability of the elite at the top. So if your bright up and coming stockbrokers are all doing lines of coke down at the strip bar on the weekends because of they're riding the lightest bubble, they're probably not going to upset the apple cart that you have laid down for your succession plan for your shadowy bank to be handed down from old codger number 1 to slightly less old codger number 2 in some kind of dynastic 1%er scheme, right? So the more people that are willing to fuck themselves up on drugs and ruin their family lives and disable themselves and limit their future potential for economic growth, that's fine. And like I said, if people like drugs, that's fine. And if you can hold your liquor, if you know what I mean, and not let your life get out of control, I'm pretty libertarian. I don't really care. I still don't know how I would deal with somebody trying to deal meth across the street from the middle school that my daughter might be going to, but I am pretty libertarian, so I'm okay with you spending your money how you want to spend it. But please understand that drug abuse, is a short path to lower socioeconomic status and losing a lot of your financial resources. So if you are making worse decisions, you're mentally compromised, and you have less money coming in, then you're less of a threat to the people at the top of the system, right? And I'm not saying there aren't dumb rich kids that do drugs, but the dumb rich kids that you see doing drugs are not going to be the ones that inherit the reins of power at the very top of society. So somebody has chosen to retain this criminal system because they're benefiting from it. So if you don't address that, they are slowing the natural process by which black people are getting out of this process. There is not redlining. There is not enough structural racism to keep black people who deserve, who are doing the hard work to get out of that environment. There's nothing there. There's not enough there to keep people who want it bad enough from getting out of that environment. And it's being slowed down by this desire. And I realize that is slightly conspiracy theory territory, but I will stand by it. And if you do research on narco money, it is flowing to the top. This is Truth Toothpaste, signing off. Thank you, Vaush. I enjoyed your video, even though I politically would prefer a different situation to this problem. Have a great day, everybody.